oh man, what a season they had. But going into their 2021 is honestly, in my opinion, pretty uneventful for the Raiders last year. And that's just my opinion. Probably I was paying too much of what was going on in their offseason. But nonetheless, for 2020, for them, they got off to a hot start in the first half. But just like in 2019, they completely cool off. They blew away games that they needed to win to finally get back in the playoffs, and they just couldn't finish it. So they go 8-8. They kept John Gruden for another year. And it was during the last offseason, they tried to make attempts to upgrade that defense that had been pretty horrific in the last couple of seasons. They added the likes of defense and Yannick Ngakoue, Quinn Jefferson, and corner Casey Hayward. So they shored up that defense. They also shored up an offensive line that been kind of bad, but they also reached for a right tackle. They also, they reached for a little bit. A guy that's been kind of in college. They went for a right tackle in Alex Leatherwood, again, who's been in college. So, going into the season, you have John Gruden, head coach, who hasn't been living up to his hefty 10-year contract, and Derek Carr has been okay. He's been okay as their quarterback. So not many expectations were in store for them. In an especially competitive AFC West that had Patrick Mahomes, obviously, and then Justin Herbert was going to be in his year 2. So who knows? Maybe the Raiders were just going to be third place father or even bottom of the basement in 2021. But in their first early weeks of the season, no, it wasn't. They got to a surprising 3-0 start, netting upsets over the Baltimore Ravens and the Pittsburgh Steelers in consecutive weeks. So unlike other teams, other 3-0 teams, this was no fluke. This didn't seem like no fluke for the Vegas Raiders. They actually netted quality wins over last season's playoff teams. The problem was, though, unfortunately for them, that infamous saying, what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas, went into full overdrive. Yes, a series of events in the preceding weeks kicked into overdrive. You had head coach John Gruden. There were massive amounts of emails leaked that came from the investigation regarding Dan Snyder, and those emails consisted of racist, derogatory statements to certain players and key people around the NFL that were made by John Gruden, and that gave a bad look onto him in the Raiders organization. And after a loss to the Chicago Bears in Week 5, he stepped down, he resigned, and that led to Rich Bisaccia entering in as the interim head coach. So it was also during the bye week. A couple of weeks later, sure, the Raiders won 2 more games after John Gruden left, but it's also during the bye week. After that second-year receiver Henry Ruggs was arrested for DUI that ended up killing a woman and her dog late at night, and then second-year corner Damon Arnett showed his guns, his firearms, on Instagram Live and made death threats about it. So both of them ended up getting released. Henry Ruggs in serious trouble. So it took up a big toll, both physically and mentally, on the Vegas Raiders. In the mid-season point, the cards were beginning to fall, and Vegas was beginning to burn on the Raiders. So they would endure a very bad 1-5 stretch that included 2 40-point ass kickings from the Kansas City Chiefs. Yes, 40-point ass kickings twice, at home, on primetime television, and on the road in Kansas City. So not a good look. And let's remember the fact that that 40-point ass kicking in Kansas City was because the Raiders stupidly danced on Kansas City's logo. Don't do that. Don't piss them off. So either way, this loss of Henry Ruggs, I mean, sure, he did a stupid thing, but it really impacted the flow of the Raiders offense. Derek Carr no longer had a downfield option, no threat. And not even the late season signing of Deshaun Jackson, who got released by the Rams, he wasn't able to fix that problem. The defense ended up giving a shit ton of points during this period, They gave up way too many big plays that were already out of reach by the time the play was about to proceed. So they were 6-7 in December, after getting embarrassed again by Kansas City. So the Raiders looked broken physically and emotionally after all the drama they were enduring. And by that point, like, people were thinking, should they give up the season? Should they tank? Should they just like let it ride, go for a high draft pick? But instead, Rich Bisaccia motivated them. They motivated them to get better. They were still in playoff positioning. It's like, hey, let's go take it. Let's go take that spot that they were still alive for. I mean, they took it to heart, and sure, it wasn't the prettiest of football, but they managed to finish the season winning their last 4 games to net a playoff berth. And that last game of the season against the LA Chargers, yeah, it got them into the playoffs. And during this stretch, both sides made critical plays, especially from Derek Carr and breakout slot receiver Hunter Renfrow on the offensive end, Max Crosby and Yannick Ngakoue lighting up that pass rush. And of course, like I said, to get that playoff berth, they had to face the Chargers at home in the final game of the regular season. And they were literally they were in overtime. They were literally milking the clock. All they had to do was milk that clock and tie the game. And it could have sent the Chargers to the playoffs as well. They were literally doing LA a favor. But then Brandon Staley calls a timeout, and then it changes the game plan for Las Vegas, and they only get into the playoffs instead of the Clippers. So the Raiders win in the season finale, and they go to Cincinnati, and it was predicted that Cincinnati was going to kick their ass, but no, the Raiders actually managed to stay alive in that game, and sure, they didn't win it in the end because they didn't make enough plays, and Derek Carr got intercepted near the end zone. But everyone from top to bottom on this Raiders squad fought their hearts out. They really fought their hearts out, and they have Rich Bisaccia to thank for that. They managed to fight off all this drama, all this emotional heartbreak, just to get into the postseason. Derek Carr did pretty damn good in the season, despite his usual oddball turnovers, his lack of options, and he also didn't even have Darren Waller for a good chunk of the season with injuries, and kind of disappointing for Darren Waller. Derek Carr also had a bad offensive line. The defense did much better than in years past, and the signings of Ngakoue and Casey Hayward paid big dividends. Like I said, with Hunter Renfrow, big breakout year for him. He stepped up big when there was literally no options for Derek Carr to go to. But most importantly, interim head coach Rich Bisaccia really lifted the team up when literally the entire Raiders organization was kind of in a black hole to finish out the season strong. Now, some of his coaching decisions were kind of during games, but his personality, his people skills, he was really needed. The players liked him, and what he did was far and beyond to keep his team afloat. Now, it was kind of sucked that it wasn't enough for Mark Davis to keep him around as the permanent head coach, but hopefully it helps the Raiders and Mark Davis to learn that lesson. Play your hearts out, be a people person, and all that. Now, going to the offseason, they already found their next head coach in Josh McDaniels, as well as their new general manager, because they fired Mike Mayock, Dave Ziegler. So they were in a big position. Those two were in a big position and still are in a big position to continue the success, turn this luck around, turn that playoff spot, turn that playoff game that they're in into even more. And oh boy, did they. So going into the offseason, they had around $20 million to spend initially. Some of their key free agents included Marcus Mariota, Quinn Jefferson, and Jonathan Hatkins, Carl Nassib, KJ Wright, Deshaun Jackson, Richie Incognito. Those are at least some of the key free agents. There are other key free agents like Casey Hayward, Zay Jones, Chandler Jones. No, not Chandler Jones. He signed, by the way. But there are other key free agents like Casey Hayward, Zay Jones. They're already gone. But going back to Chandler Jones, he signed with the Las Vegas Raiders. So big addition to the Vegas pass rush, which, by the way, gained a key extension with Master Crosby. So 4 more years with Mr. Crosby, and he gets a running mate with Chandler Jones. So big addition to their pass rush. But the biggest move that they made in Vegas with rolling the dice and getting that wild card was the trade for Davante Adams from the Green Bay Packers. Holy shit. Yeah. Yes, they traded 2 first-round picks for this year. Yes, it literally didn't cost them much aside from the contract extension, the big hefty contract extension. Yes, it only cost the Raiders this year's first and second round picks and a massive contract for Davante Adams. Holy shit. So Derek Carr gets his old teammate from Fresno back on the team, not back on the team, but reunited. This is big. This is really big. I mean, yes, Derek Carr is kind of a downgrade from Aaron Rodgers, kind of, but the two, obviously, teammates in college. So hopefully this worked out. Hopefully this works out for them and gives the Raiders a massive boost in the offense. So teams won't always be targeting Hunter Renfrow and Darren Waller. It gives Derek Carr more options to play with in this team and gives what the Raiders absolutely needed in the offseason, a downfield threat to attack, to stretch the field, attack the defense, and they got it in Davante Adams. So big need that they already addressed so far this offseason. So some of the things that they still need to address is their defense. They lost Casey Hayward in free agency, so they need to go back out and get a corner. They should also consider getting a safety as well. So they added some cheap pieces, but mostly reserves in Darius Phillips and Anthony Averett. But they need a starting corner to help out the young secondary. But there's still some pieces available. You got Stephon Gilmore and Patrick Peterson still available on the free agent market at the time. And, there's still a good safety market out there. Tyrann Mathieu, anyone? They could also add some depth to the offensive line. Not sure how a 3rd round pick will look in terms of finding a gem, but you still have to solidify Derek Carr and, an offensive line that was pretty bad last year. So for the Raiders, they were in a very tough predicament in 2021. You had the John Gruden email fiasco, Henry Ruggs getting arrested. The team looked like it was going to hit big time rock bottom. But then Rich Bisaccia lit a fire in them and made a late season playoff push. And yes, while it didn't end the way that they wanted to and it didn't go further, and Rich Bisaccia didn't get a permanent gig, the Raiders, they could still continue to build on what Bisaccia did late in the season. And hopefully McDaniels continues to light a fire in them. Of course, in a positive way, in a people person way, in 2022 and beyond. So now that they got Josh McDaniels, now that they got Dave Ziegler, now that they got them taking big swings at guys like Chandler Jones and especially Davante Adams, now it's on the roster. Now it's on guys like Derek Carr and the Raiders offense and pretty much the entire team overall to play the right cards, roll the dice, and just overall execute for them to survive an all-out brawl in the AFC West in 2022.